Welcome back to another exciting edition of SOS, Soul Filling Our Sisters. I am your host, Dr. Monique Gary, and we have an amazing show for you today. Let's start off with let's start off with the important details. Did you know that February 21st was Know Your Breast Density Day? National Breast Density Day. How many of you watching actually know your breast density? Now, I'm sure you've gone to your doctor and they've said, yep, you've got dense breast, but do you really know what it means? Do you know how it impacts your risk for breast cancer? We're going to talk about it today. And what's more, we're going to talk about some of the other little known things that we're going to bring to light as we talk about the answer to your health, the answer to your generational wealth. Your health is your wealth. The answer is in your genes. So today I'm being joined by none other than Laura Crandon. She is the CEO and the founder of Touch for Life. I'm being joined by the amazing Dr. Melissa Davis from Morehouse School of Medicine, as well as Vina Morris. And she is going to tell you from her perspective the amazing work that she's doing in the advocacy space. And she is blowing off the lid with information that you and your community need to know in order to what? Keep our souls filled, keep our families healthy, and make it a prosperous life for all of us. So stay tuned because when we come back, we're going to learn about Touch for Life and we're going to talk about why the answer is in your genes. Well, let's dive right into it. I'm joined by the lovely Laura Crandon. I love that sweatshirt. Black jeans do matter. Yes, they do. And Laura, welcome back to SOS Soul Filling Our Sisters here on blackdoctor.org. And I want you to tell us more about why you started Touch for Life and the mission of Touch for Life as it pertains to addressing breast cancer disparities in Black and Indigenous communities.
I started Touch for Life for you, whoever's listening to this. It's really for you. It's to take pain and turn it into purpose. Because once I realized that some of the care that I got was really exceptional, I just couldn't stand by and just have it for myself. I had to make sure that other people knew how to access the latest in treatment, the latest in discovery, and take everything I've gone through from breast cancer to it metastasizing to my brain, being in a clinical trial, having 3 brain surgeries, firing doctors, and getting the right care team. I had to take all of that and share it with other people. And so Touch for Life is really focused on increasing the breast health IQ of our community to make sure that the outcomes that we experience are not bad, but normal. We really need to live longer. That's really
So
why
wait
I
a
do.
minute. You're telling me because you didn't say make sure the outcomes are better. You said make sure they're just not bad, right? And make sure they're equal. Tell me more about this inequality that sparked this conversation.
Yeah, and I didn't know it going through my own journey. That when I was in a clinical trial, I didn't know that most of us aren't even offered that as an option. I didn't know that when I got the testing to know what was driving my particular cancer and to see what was in my genetics, I didn't know that that was exceptional. The way that I explain it is you think about musical chairs. There are 10 people playing musical chairs. The music stops and 8 people are on the ground. Only 2 of them are left to continue playing and living. That's the odds that we're up against in many cases. Only 20% of us are even referred to genetic testing. And so, and only 20% of us are referred to this testing. And so we're not even eligible for some of the advances that are coming out or to know what our risks are. And about 30% of us are referred to, if we are diagnosed with breast cancer, to get this thing called biomarker genomic testing to know what's driving your cancer. And so we're just going to be left out like those 8 folks on the ground. And I just didn't want that to continue happening. And then overall, from a mortality perspective, we die at a 41% higher rate than our white sisters. And that just can't happen. It can't continue to happen. And so it's not about bending this curve of health equity, it's about flattening it. That's really, it's a call to arms,
Mm-hmm.
to change it, because it's unacceptable.
And it's powerful because we hear so often that, oh well, women should just get screened, or they should just get screened earlier, or that there's something that we as a community need to do and be doing different. But I feel like there are, and the data bears this out, Laura. There's disparities at every level. So let's say a woman does get screened, right? And she gets her mammogram, but she's not told her breast density, because I want to bring this conversation around to disparities across the board. So she's not told her breast density. She's not told that, what, you need supplemental imaging. There's more that you should be getting for the level of density, right? And let's say she does get a diagnosis of breast cancer, but then she's not referred for that genetic testing. And then she's not referred for that biomarker testing. And then she's not referred for that MRI, right? And there's so many layers of decision making that just doesn't go in our favor, that it becomes more than incidental. It becomes more than just a socioeconomic factor. There are other factors that are brought to bear in this conversation, and there's a science, I feel, as well behind all of this. And so we want to make sure that today, as you are watching, we're centering this conversation around inequity and around disparity, because there's something for everyone to know, and questions you can ask your doctor, questions you can ask your community, and there are places you can go for answers. So tell me a little bit about that shirt you're wearing here.
Oh, I hope you like it. It'll soon be coming to a store near you, merch. We started Black Jeans Matter actually a year ago, 2023. Yeah, it was a vision, because we realized, actually coming out of one of the big cancer conferences, I heard a lot of presentations about the advances in science and the new drugs that were coming out. And as I looked deeper into who was in the study and what was being discovered, I discovered that we're not in the mix. We're not in the bio data. So you can't discover what's not there. Like, what's driving these higher rates for us to get, for example, triple negative breast cancer, or very aggressive breast cancer at younger ages than our white sisters, and die at higher rates than our white sisters? What's really driving that? I got really mad. I actually got angry, because I saw that we need to be in the equation. They need to be looking for what's driving us. And so Black Jeans Matter is really like a FUBU. It's for us, by us. We're not talking about in relation to anyone. It's really telling our community, your Black Jeans Matter, because the answer to cancer is in our genes. That is true. I believe that in my core. And we've got to then know, like you said, the questions to ask, what these mutations, these things are inside our body that's driving these little clues, like a detective that's inside. And so we've got like lots of tools on our site to help guide you through that exact path that you were talking about. Questions to ask your doctor, documenting your family history. What are biomarkers? What is genetic testing? How do you inherit these things? And we break it down in, our sister girl language, so you can understand it. And that's what Black Jeans Matter is, a movement. It
Wow.
is. It's not a slogan. We're getting out of the community. We're going to your conferences. We're going to your chapter meetings. And we are showing up with workshops, with tools, with webinars, and information, and even parties, to make sure that you have the information to live a good quality, healthy life. That's what we're here to do.
Wow. Well, you heard it here first. The answer to cancer is in your genes. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more because, just like you said, there are clues. We have investigators, right? We got some private eyes who are leading in this space. And I want to bring out our sister. When we get back, we are going to talk to one of those individuals who are following the clues and getting us some answers. So stay tuned here on blackdoctor.org. This is S.O.S. Soul Filling Our Sisters. Well, welcome back. If you are just joining us here on blackdoctor.org, it's the Soul Filling Our Sisters. And it is my joy and my privilege as we talk about what's in our genes and the answer to cancer being in those genes to talk about the individuals who are making it happen. Who are the investigators? Who's checking the genes and who's the experts? We got one today for you. It's our sister, Dr. Melissa Davis.
Good morning, Dr. Mo. It's so good to see you again.
It's great to see you too. But wait, I got to read your bio just a little bit because she is the inaugural Georgia Research Alliance Distinguished Investigator for Morehouse School of Medicine. Dr. Davis is an international leader in genomics and health disparities research, and she spearheaded the new Institute of Genomic Medicine. Her groundbreaking work explores how genetics inform disparities in cancer diagnosis and treatment. Dr. Davis believes in diversity in genomics and that it's crucial to overcome bias and improve precision medicine for underserved populations. With expertise honed at Yale, the University of Chicago, and now she brings her pioneering spirit back home to Georgia. Dr. Melissa Davis is a transformative addition shaping the future of genomic medicine. Doc, welcome. So great to see you again.
Thank you. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Laura, for inviting me. Soul Filling Our Sisters. Great.
We love that, and we want to fill our sisters with a little bit of knowledge this morning because we're using some words here: genomics, genetics, and I want you to help people understand one, the difference between the two, and then how do genomics help us understand what's going on in cancer diagnosis and treatment.
Of course. So, first of all, genome, the word, just simply means all of the genes all at once. Okay, so we talk about genetics. Typically, we're talking about one gene and we're studying the lineage of a gene through families, the status of a gene. When we talk about whether a gene has a variant or a mutation, we're really focused on one gene. Genomics allows us, using more recent technology, to really look at more than one, thousands at a time, 10,000 at a time, and really how they all coexist and work together. And genomics research has been pivotal in uncovering the genetic underpinnings of breast cancer, particularly breast cancer disparities. It's how genome-wide association studies, for instance, or GWAS studies, are those standard large studies that help us uncover what are the gene variants in the population at large that are correlated with different diseases that are caused by gene mutations.
Okay, so let me make sure that I got this because what I hear you saying is I hear you saying that genomics help us understand the variations in our genes that put us at elevated cancer risk, correct?
Yes, it reveals certain genetic variants, so types of genes, because we all may have from person to person a different version of a gene, and certain versions of genes are associated with breast cancer risk because the function of the gene could be altered. So, for instance, one of the most famous breast cancer genes, BRCA, is a gene that normally functions to repair DNA. So if you have a mutation in that gene, then it no longer functions properly. And that's why people who have those mutations have an elevated risk for breast cancer, because the DNA is sort of more vulnerable in that state.
Gotcha. Now, are these variations so they're passed down from generation to generation, but can they also happen within generations or spontaneously?
Absolutely. So the way we look at it from a genetics perspective, so a genetic counselor, for instance, would be studying your family history. So in that regard, yes, you could potentially inherit the version of a gene that gives you a predisposition. And then, if that's the case, then we would have sort of more surveillance around you, right? We'll be screening you more often. But certainly, the longer we live, the longer we walk the planet, the longer you are exposed to things like even sunlight, your DNA has a longer opportunity to just have spontaneous mutations. These are mutations that just happen across your lifetime. And they happen. I mean, we all walk around with various mutations from time to time, but there are systems in our cells that find those mutations and repair them. They correct them. And so that's what BRCA does. It normally, if the gene is functioning properly, it would identify those mutations and correct them, right? So that's why it's an important gene. And so that's why when you have a loss of function, is what we often call it, of a gene that does DNA repair or mutation correction, it increases your risk for breast cancer. But yes, it could happen spontaneously. And again, it's what you're exposed to. So that's why it's very important then to be aware of your environment and also what you put in your body.
Okay, so I hear you saying that our bodies, our machines, right? Our bodies work like a factory. And there's gatekeepers and there are genes and there are proteins that help us to keep from making mistakes and allowing those mistakes to replicate, correct?
Absolutely. And genomics, bringing it back to your question, allows us to look at those effects in an integrated way. This type of research helps us understand why, for instance, some groups of people have higher incidence rates and or more aggressive forms of breast cancer, and even different responses to treatment,
Mm.
because we have about 30,000 genes, right? And so we don't even really yet understand what all of them do. But the ones that are most important, we have, a key understanding, especially where cancer is concerned, of a key couple of hundred of them, if you will. And so genomics allows us to investigate how they're expressed differently in one group versus another, but then just differently in a cancer cell versus a normal cell. And that also then allows us to understand what causes the cancer in different individuals. So, going along the lines of precision medicine, because
Mhm.
no two cancers are the same. And so, as Laura was speaking earlier about her experience and having genetic testing done and genomic testing done, it's important that we make sure that this type of information is available to people who have disproportionately heavier burdens. So the ones that have this prevalence of the most aggressive forms of breast cancer, which happens to be Black women. We have this higher proportional rate of one of the most aggressive forms of breast cancer, but we haven't really fully investigated in this population why we have this predisposition.
Mm. Wow. And we have a good question in the chat here, Dr. Melissa. When a mutation happens, is it a permanent change or do they continue to evolve?
That's a great question. So, if it's a mutation, that literally means something has happened to change the DNA sequence. So, your DNA sequence is made up of 4 letters: A, T, C's, and G's, right? So, those letters are important to encode. They encode the information from gene to gene. And so, if I change one of those letters, I can change then what is encoded in the gene. So those mutations, if they're changed in your DNA, if the mutations in your DNA, in terms of being permanent, again, if there's a DNA repair mechanism at work, no, your DNA repair mechanism could potentially, correct that mistake. But if it's made in a certain type of cell, like for instance, your germline, so what's passed on to you, that mutation is in every single cell in your body. And that system that I'm talking about doesn't really have sort of a blueprint to correct it. So the spontaneous mutations can be corrected. But the ones that you inherit, those are permanent. Those are the ones that are in every cell in your body.
Wow. And I want to talk more a little bit about your research. So
Sure.
how is your institute helping to address some of these disparities? And tell us a little bit more about your specific area of research.
Absolutely. So the Institute for Translational Genomic Medicine has launched several initiatives that address breast cancer disparities in the Black community, and we'll be announcing one pretty soon in a couple of weeks. But we conduct what we call comprehensive genomic studies that allow us to identify the unique genetic markers that influence breast cancer risk and treatment responses, and we focus on the African diaspora. So while we are definitely focused on the Black community, from a genetics perspective and understanding our lineage, our genetic ancestry, our shared genetic background, on a population level, in order to see this sort of predisposition across this population, it means that we share something in common in our genetic background. And that common thread is our ancestry. And so at the Institute of Genomic Medicine, we are launching investigations that harness our ability to collaborate with our African brothers and sisters and collaborators there on the continent. And we're developing new tools to do this genomic study in our population, ensuring that it's accurate. Because historically, the majority of the genomic data that's existed has only been derived on people of European descent. And this is important because we know that different populations have unique genetic backgrounds. And so over 95% of the data as of last year was originated from European populations. And said a different way, less than 5% of the genetic data that we have represents 80% of the population. And that inequity translates into inaccuracy when we talk about precision medicine. And so my research actually focuses on studying the differences in tumors of people who are from sub-Saharan Africa, comparing them to African Americans. And we've proven time and time again that the tumor biology, like just how the cells are composed in tumors, how they signal each other, how they grow, are different across different populations. We've done comparative studies between Black women and white women in the United States. And more recently, we've actually harnessed our ability to measure genetic ancestry and identify genes that express a certain way because of genetic ancestry in these tumors, which then gives us genetic factors that can probably contribute to the higher prevalence of, for instance, triple negative breast cancer in our Black population. And these insights are crucial for developing more effective, personalized treatment approaches, preventative measures tailored to our genetic profiles in the Black community. And so that's what I'm trying to make sure that through our institute, the research similar to what I do, but others at Morehouse School of Medicine have been doing, have a larger platform, are empowered through more technological advances, and of course, seeking more funding to make sure that we get rid of the bias that is in our current state of genomics research.
Absolutely. Because the one important thing I heard you say is that if different populations have a unique genetic background, why doesn't cancer research reflect this? And why aren't we funding this? And why aren't we investigating this more? So we're going to talk more about that. But right now, it is actually time for a giveaway. I want to remind all of you to please join the SOS community. If you like this programming, if you're participating in our chat and you got questions about genetics, about cancer, about knowing your risk, about keeping your family safe and healthy, we want you to be a part of the community. And so we have an opportunity for you to join the Touch for Life family. And we've got a QR code, we got a flyer, and we want you to enter to win. Right now, take out your cell phone, click the QR code. I can't tell you what the giveaway is. You'll get to find out when you join the community. And we will talk more about saving our souls, soul filling our sisters, and the answer to cancer being in our genes. So click the QR code and join the SOS community now. And we're going to continue this conversation. And, I get to bring on a really, really fun guest right now because it's not just about the science, right? It's about the lived experience. And how are people using this information to change their lives? And so I want to bring out a really special guest right now. This is a young lady I had the privilege of meeting here at my farm, and Vina Morris. Vina Morris is the founder of Afro Pink. Afro Pink Arts, a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing awareness of breast cancer into communities of color. As a two-time breast cancer survivor, she realized that her lack of awareness about the disease, and she learned that Black women have a 40% higher mortality rate from breast cancer compared with other races. And this really drove her to take action. And it became the basis for her launching her nonprofit back in 2020. Wow, during the pandemic, to dispel myths about breast cancer and get us straight and get us right. So here we go, Vina. How you doing? Welcome to SOS. I'm going to take you off of mute. We'll wait for our sound to kick in. But Laura, tell us, how did you first meet Vina? How'd you get connected while Vina comes off of mute?
It's this community, it's a strong network. And so I had the privilege of being on Dr. Mo's farm last fall as well, and sharing in the wonderful day. Despite the rain, we had sunshine. It was really impactful. And then just through the connection of a sorority sister reaching out and saying, I said, we need to have someone on SOS with lived experience and who's had this testing. Do you know anybody? And literally within hours, Vina showed up and is a ram in the bush, and I really appreciate her.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And so good to see you again, Dr. Mo. And thank you, Laura, for the opportunity. So let's get to it. So Afro Pink, as she said, started in October 2020. We think about out-of-the-box ways that we can connect with the community to ensure that we are, one, informing people with facts so they can make better health choices, encouraging preventative health care, whether it's through a screening, teach you how to do a monthly self-breast check, or through distributing DNA, health DNA, and ancestry kits through my partnership with 23andMe, because we want to make sure that we are bridging the gaps. Like I heard a lot of things today that that really reminds me or really gives me a testimony to why I do these things, is to make sure that we're coming down to the level of having that sister girl talk, making sure that we meet you where you are, whether it's a digital platform like this, on your couch, in the car, in a picnic, wherever you are, at your community events, whether it's a fashion show. I walked the runway the other day. I taught people how to do a breath self-check. In your backyard, at your parties, wherever you are, so we can make sure that we are talking about whatever it is and breast cancer awareness, and making sure that you are informed with information. And you have a kit to also talk about your family history, your health DNA, that can help you talk about the risk that you may have, so that you can have a better conversation with your doctor and also with your family. So we try to think about out-of-the-box ways where we can meet you where you are. So.
I love that. And I want you to tell me, before you got diagnosed, what did you know about breast cancer? Because your bio says that you realized that you didn't have an awareness. What was it that you wish you had known?
Well, I wish I had known that I can get this. What I knew was that it was a disease primarily for white women. That's what I thought. I'm going to say I was very ignorant about it. I didn't think it was something that impacted us, because I didn't see people in our community with breast cancer. No one was talking about it. I did hear about the BRCA gene mutations. I didn't understand that it was a BRCA gene mutation. I just thought if you had a BRCA gene, you get breast cancer. So I didn't know if I had any of those things. And I didn't believe I can get breast cancer. So I knew very little about it. And I realized how ignorant I was when I heard the diagnosis, you have breast cancer. Changed my whole life and my whole outlook from there.
Wow. And, I wonder if you can talk about what when you give out these kits, right? And you go to these events, what's the response? What are women saying, and how is it being received?
It's a mix. Some people are so excited to get it because they've tried to get a genetic test via their doctors and providers, and they were turned away. And then they realized, I can still get it, but it's very expensive. So when I found out when I got connected with 23andMe, I found a different way so that we can still get them something that can tell them about their genes from their saliva, something that's easy and something that's free via AfroPink, to be able to understand those risks and have informed conversations. So, but mostly some people are afraid. They don't want to know. Some people are also, due to the history, we have to fight the history with, the Tuskegee experiment and all the other history with medical testing on Black people without our permission, without our knowledge. So I have to fight through that. So I have to always say, hey, we have to move from the past, because as Dr. Melissa said, we need to really clear up that disparity in the genome pool. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but we need to diversify that gene pool a little bit so we can understand things that are unique to us. So it's saying things like that and really landing that with folks so they can be receptive to taking the test. Some people are afraid that, the government is watching, things like that. But we have to move past that, because it's about what you said, Dr. Mo, generational health, it's generational wealth. If we have that information, we can now have better conversations. We can be informed. I was having a meeting, just one quick example, a meeting with one of the partners here in New York the other day. And she said, the health DNA kit from 23andMe is not a real genetic test. I said, you know what? You may be right or wrong. However, I can tell you that if someone came to them and said, I have a 27% risk of this. I said, you know what? That's telling me it's doing exactly what we're designed, what we are doing, what we intended it to do. Is to have the conversations about the things they have risk for, so that you can try to give them some type of preventative healthcare, some type of test, whatever that you can do to continue the conversation about their health and starting their health history with you or from that point forward. So I was ready for it. I was like, well, if we can't afford it, it's another barrier to having these tests. And why might be having these free tests to provide to folks? It breaks down another barrier, and it also stops some generational curses that we have of not sharing our health information with our family and with our doctors. So, or not knowing them just to share it with the doctors.
You're right about that. And, it's a good point. And it's a valid point that tests like 23andMe aren't designed to check for all the cancer genes and things. Right. And there are more specific tests that we can use. But when you're talking about educating a community and using tools that you have and things that these are products that people are very familiar with. And we're in the era where people do want to know what's in their genes. They're checking their ancestry. They're trying to figure out where they're coming from and where they're going. And I think we can tap into that for the cancer community and for the benefit of understanding more about cancer and just getting more informed. And on the topic of being more informed, did you know what breast density was before all of this? BC, before cancer, did you know what breast density was? And did you know why it matters?
I did not know, but I will say at age 35, when I found a lump that and during a monthly breast self-check, when I went to the doctor hysterically, I had a doctor who actually educated me on, first she told me that I had extremely dense breast tissue, which she told me that it would be very hard to find lumps and other abnormalities within your breast. And then she also told me I had something called fibrocystic breast disease. So that was 9 years before I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So that's how I learned. So one of the things that I do, Dr. Mo, is I bring these prosthetic breasts that teaches you how the different breast tissue feels and what it feels like with lumps. You can see how hard it is to find lumps based on breast density. But I did not know that until I did the work. That's my hashtag, do the work, found the lump, went to the doctor, and the doctor took me seriously because I was hysterical and thought I was going to die because I had this lump in my breast, but it turned out it was just fibrocystic breast disease and also, extremely dense breast tissue is what she told me. So
wow. So we got to pause here and do a little bit of work because, Laura, I know you bring those with you also. And when we talk about breast density, right, let's do a little bit of a primer on it. The density from the medical perspective is the amount of what we call fibroglandular or busy breast tissue, the stuff that makes milk, the stuff that responds to hormones, the places where cancers are more likely to begin. It happens in that part of the breast tissue. And when you have more of it, you have a higher risk for breast cancer. So that's a hashtag, or that's a thing we're going to put in the real. Breast density is an independent risk factor for breast cancer, right? The thickness of your breast. It shows up white on the mammogram. It's not by the touch. When you touch and you feel and it feels doughy and thick, that doesn't mean you have dense breast. It's how much of the white stuff is on the screen. How cloudy is your sky? And the more cloud you got, the harder it is to see the cloud in the cloudy sky. And that's what mammograms do. They look for the density. Laura, you want to weigh in? I see you over there with your hands.
I know, because that's how it started.
Break it down for us.
Yeah, I started with dense breast, but I didn't know what you're saying, Dr. Mo, nobody told me the degree of
Nope.
density. I didn't know that means the radiologist can't see, but like no one referred me to what you call supplemental screening, an MRI, an ultrasound. That should have happened. Thank God I did what Vina said. I was doing my self checks, and that's how I found the lump. But like somebody, if you got the dense breast, you got to ask what degree and what do I do about it next?
Mhm. Absolutely. And we're required now by law in many states to tell you how dense your breasts are. Right. So when you get your report, it says the sensitivity of mammography for heterogeneously dense or greater breast is diminished right at the bottom. And it says you have category A, B, C, or D dense breast. So if you're watching and you don't know what your category of density is, your homework, your assignment is to go back, find your mammogram report, and look on the bottom and see what is your category of density. If you have category C or D density, that means that more than 50 to 75% of your, I'm old, so my TV screen has static on it. Remember console TVs? You got snow on the TV screen and it's harder to see the picture. And if you have more than 75% density, that means looking at your breast on a mammogram is like looking at a snow cone and it's hard to find the cancers. And you should get more imaging. You should talk to your doctor about it. So we're going to talk more about knowing your density, why it's important, knowing your genes, and we're going to talk to some more survivors here. So I want us to introduce our most amazing Monisha Jackson Shorter. I get to bring her to, hey, there we go. Monisha Jackson Shorter. She
Hi,
is a
Dr.
breast
Mo.
cancer. Hi, she's a thriver. She's my friend, my soror. She is a chief marketing officer for Touch for Life. As a longtime DEI advocate, Monisha has dedicated most of her life to amplifying diverse voices and eliminating barriers that prevent full participation of minority professionals. And she has done so through the Monisha Jackson Shorter Endowed Scholarship for the Center for Minorities in Science and Engineering, the Endowed Scholarship for Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated through the University of Maryland College Park. Yes, sir. And recognizing all of this, she now has launched her startup called Cornerstone Creative Group, which specializes in engaging digital experiences through design, content management, brand strategy, marketing, technology. She does it all in addition to being our chief marketing officer for Touch for Life and being a thriver. How you doing today?
Well, Dr. Mo, your check is definitely in the mail, and I have to be sure to take you everywhere I go because you made me sound like somebody. But no, I think this journey has really taught me a lot, and I think I've always been in situations where I was advocating for others, whether that was diversifying the tech ecosystem and making sure there were pathways, right, for future Black engineers, or whether that's working with, in founders communities and creating opportunities for Black entrepreneurs. This journey in health was different because it's more personal. And so I think you heard from Laura, you heard from Vina, um, the disparities, while they are vast, they're largely unknown. And I think there are a lot of narratives about, how we as Black people don't take care of ourselves. We're poor, we're uneducated, we don't care about our health. And I think what we're realizing is that the healthcare system has actually let us down, right? And so when I kind of teleport myself back into 2016, when I was diagnosed for the first time, I was completely unprepared for my diagnosis. There was no reason for me to believe that I was at risk because the science at the time was BRCA. We heard, Dr. Melissa talk about that. I tested negative for BRCA. I had no history on either side of my family of breast cancer. And here I was being diagnosed. And I remember very, distinctly, I was, in a ministry at my church, and Dr. S.O.S, who was really all about holistic health, was saying, that's just not natural. It doesn't make any sense, because a lot of the explanations that the doctors were giving were there was an overproduction of, estrogen, and that was the reason. And ironically, I was on birth control because my doctor had told me that lowered my risk for ovarian cancer. And that was really the only reason why I had stayed on it. But she said that's still not an explanation because tons of people, take, birth control, so that can't be the reason why you have breast cancer. And she says, I think you need to continue to probe. And so I think in my journey with Touch for Life, it's really all about how do we empower people to be their own advocates? How do we teach people to ask questions? What are some of the keys to unlocking access to some of the care that Vina was talking about. How do we get those secondary screenings if you have dense breast? How do you get referred for genetic testing if you have a family history of cancer in your family? And so these are all things I didn't know. And now I know there are certain questions you can ask, and there's certain things you can share with your doctor that make you eligible for these exams because you're at a higher risk. And so I didn't know my risks. So now we teach people, you have to know your risks. You have to know what to ask. And it's a conversation. You're not going in there just listening to what the doctor's saying, but you're asking them questions as well.
I know that's right. It's definitely a two-way street. And I think sometimes we get in these spaces and we forget, we lose our agency, we lose our voice, and it's hard to know what to ask for in real time. And so I love this mission of helping people to feel empowered and relaxed about it, because I'm sure there's been times that you can think of when you didn't know all the questions to ask, and you tell a story about getting genetic testing and kind of understanding that in the context of family history. I wonder if you could share a little bit about, while it's important to know what's in your genes, it's not all there is, right? Because how much of what's in our genes actually ends up expressing itself as cancer, and how many people who get cancer don't have a gene mutation?
Yeah, that's a great point. We know that about 5 to 10% of cancers are inheritable, and it's not the whole story. And so I think the message here is we want to treat, you know, healthcare and whole and wellness, like, just the holistic approach to wellness as a family business. And so what we're saying is Black families need to have these conversations. Sometimes it's taboo. We know Big Mama died. We don't know what she died from. We need to have these hard conversations because it's important, right? Laura pointed out that so much of our bio data is not included, right, in these, large, vast systems that, clinicians and other people use, whether it's developing treatments or formularies. And so what we're saying is we need to be included. And so the way we do that is by talking to our families. Next time you're at an event, sit around the table, talk about your family health history, talk about the diseases that have, taken out generations of your family, so that you can now stop that from happening. Like, it stops with us. So whether that's getting genetic testing or simply just documenting your family history, that's going to help future generations of your family. And collectively, if we all do this, right, then we begin to move the needle, right? We begin to change the conversation. We change, right, the outcomes, right? If we all get genetic testing, then those, other mutations that are yet to be discovered get found. But we also just learn a lot about what's effective and what's not, like what treatments work and what treatments don't. And so that's really what we're trying to talk about is, how do we have these conversations? How do we treat wellness not as a bad thing, or treat health not as a bad word, but it's a family business. Like you said, your health is your wealth. So if health is your wealth, right, then that should be your family business, because we want everybody in our family to be wealthy.
Wow. And Laura, this brings up a really good point. I want to pull you in because Monisha mentioned something. It's not just about knowing so you can know what screening, knowing that you're at the highest risk and that you need to get imaging twice a year, that sort of thing, but knowing about your treatment options. And I know that that's a big one for Black Genes Matter and for Touch for Life. Talk a little bit about how knowing your bio data can help you with treatment.
Yes, it's so important, because what's happening is when you think about where medicine is going, and Dr. Melissa talked about the, no two cancers being the same. It's unique. What's driving your particular cancer when you've got a diagnosis for actually breast, colorectal, lung, any cancer, right? You really need to know, get inside and figure out what's happening. Because the treatments that are coming out, it starts with looking for those mutations, those things that aren't functioning properly, and then targeting, like kind of heat-seeking missiles, the medication to focus to fix what's not working and leave all the healthy stuff alone, which is part of the reason why I'm even talking to you, because I'm on treatment, but it's focused on what's not working for me to kind of stop those things that promote cancer in my body, but leave all those healthy things alone. And so when that's happening with the precision medicine and precision oncology, the only way you're going to get access to like the latest technology, like like it would be in your phone or your car, is that you got to know what these mutations are. How do you know what those mutations are? You got to get tested. You got to have the test of your tissue, of your blood to see, hey, what's really driving your cancer? What are the things that aren't quite functioning right? So we could say, oh my goodness, you have this thing that's not right. There's a special medication focused on fixing that thing that's not right. But if you don't know, you're going to get left out and you're going to get like chemo from 20 years ago.
Well, we don't want you to be left out. So we want you to stay right here with us, because when we come back, we are going to bring all of our panelists and we're going to talk about the world that we imagine and how it looks, how it feels, and what we want you to take away from this conversation here on blackdoctor.org. This is SOS Soul Filling Our Sisters. Stay right with us. Well, and welcome back to SOS here on blackdoctor.org. We've been filling our sisters with information, with knowledge, and now I get to bring all of our panelists. I'm going from the bottom of my screen, Vina Morris. We got Dr. Melissa Davis. We have Monisha Jackson Shorter, and of course, our CEO, Laura Crandon for Touch for Life. Ladies, this has been an impactful show. And my question for you as we begin to close out this segment in this hour is that, we can't be it until we can see it. What is the world that you envision, and what do you want people to take away from this conversation? Dr. Davis, I want to start with you. If people were watching and taking notes, what's something they should have written down on their notepad?
Well, first of all, that genomics research is very important, that there is a gap in our understanding of the diversity in the population in terms of genetic background, and that has impeded our progress, and we need to make sure that we raise awareness about this disparity in our genetic data, but that also we are working towards identifying better precision medicine, meaning understanding how and why cancer is different in populations and more aggressive, for instance, in the Black population, and finding those cancer genes that are relevant, to our population so that we improve the accuracy of the treatments that are available.
Wow. Thank you for that. And I'm going to go to Vina next. Vina, tell us, what should people know and take away from this conversation?
Do the work. Check yourself on a regular basis. Get to know your breasts. Don't be afraid to look at them every day. And if you see something different than it is normally, then that's time to have the conversations. If you would like to take a 23andMe kit, it's not diagnostic, but it can help with conversations around health in your family and with your doctor as well. Take a moment to take one. It could change your life in a better way. So do the work and don't be afraid to advocate for yourself.
There it is. There's a QR code. Pull out your cell phone really quickly. And Dr. Davis, while we're talking about this, there was a question in the chat that asked, if you did a 23andMe, could you still get genetic testing through your cancer program or your geneticist? And I think the answer to that is yes, because 23andMe is a commercially available test, right? And it's different than one of the other multi-gene panels. But I want to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So 23andMe and any of these over-the-counter or, to consumer, direct-to-consumer testing is what we call it. It can sometimes give you some information about predispositions, but it's limited in its understanding of what is clinically relevant. You're not going to have the benefit of a clinician then to even follow up on 23andMe testing. In order to have an actionable test result, you have to have it done in a clinical setting. And so the 23andMe test, while it is informative and fun to know more about your genetic background, and it can tell you a lot about, for instance, your ancestry and relatives, who have also taken the test, you really need to make sure that you follow up with your clinician and take what we call CLIA, clinical FDA approved test, so that your clinicians can take action on any findings that the 23andMe test may tell you.
Wow, wow. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, as Vina mentioned, it's a great way to have the conversation, right, with your family and spark a conversation even with your clinicians and your
Exactly.
doctor. Mm-hmm. Monisha, tell us, how this could all be different. What do you envision, as a result of the work? When you look 10 years from now, we're doing the work, as Vina said, 10 years from now, when you look back, what do you hope that you will have accomplished through this work?
I really just hope for better outcomes for our people. I really am really encouraged by a lot of the science that's going on, and we have a long way to go. But I want our people to benefit from all the advanced science that Laura talked about, the precision oncology, the targeted therapies. I want us to have the same advantage, and I want parity, right, and outcomes for our people. And I think the way that starts is by knowing your risks. And we have tons of resources on blackjeansmatter.info, things that will help you have a conversation with your doctor and questions that you should be asking, things to help you document your family health history. And even if you don't know your history, say you're adopted or say you don't know a lot about your family history, we have resources there for you too. And so we want people to be empowered. We don't want this to be a sad story. Be your own advocate, know your risks, and demand the care that you deserve. That's what I want for all of us, is to get the care that we deserve.
Wow. Laura, I'm going to invite you to chime in and give us some pearls and give people some of the facts that they should take with them and what you hope as a result of this program today.
Wow. I mean, these are all mic dropping statements that everyone's, I'm just so grateful. This the quality Black excellence on this show is really humbling. But that's what we like to bring to our community because that's the quality we deserve. I view, in the future, like we've eliminated this thing because the answer to cancer is in our genes, and Dr. Melissa Davis's lab and the research that she's doing 10 years from now, she's discovered the blockbuster unlocking key that says, whoa, you turn this off and we're all golden. I mean, that's what I see. Because again, I think about the origin of humanity and I think of the biodiversity in the African diaspora. It's gotta be us. It's gotta be us. And the only way we do that is that we say research is not a dirty word. Testing is not a dirty word. These are things we need to embrace because these are the things that are going to change our lives and change the world. Black people change the world every day, and this is no different. We need to take up arms and join this movement. Please follow us. I see Manisha looking at me. Follow us on social media. We've got our handles. Of course, at Touch for Life Inc., but also at Black Genes Matter Info, because we're going to be updating you. Join our community because we're going to share all the resources and all the latest advances. You'll have the advantage of being part of the family and part of the community so that as things come out, we're sharing them with you first. That's our commitment to you. So one day, we won't even have to have these programs because we would have solved this thing.
Wow, I thank you for that. And I want Dr. Melissa to close this out because some people are meeting you for the first time, even though we know you and we know of your work and we know of the challenges that you have had to overcome in order to even get to do this work and operate in this space. And the question I have for you
Yes,
is,
ma'am.
how can we support you? How can we amplify your work? What can we do to make sure that more people know about what you're doing and how you're doing it and make sure that we are giving you everything you need to be successful in your work?
Thank you so much. I mean, one of the things that I think is important is the patient voice, is the community voice. As scientists who've been trying to sort of push down the barriers, because we have systemic barriers all over, but from this perspective, it's been really difficult. And it's when we have an uprising in the community, when we raise awareness of the biases that are sort of in the background or even in the foundation of the clinical practice, of the clinical options. When you guys put your voice to that and ask more specific questions of your clinician, if you raise awareness in the community that it's okay to participate in genetics research, look for people like us because we are here, we are fighting this battle. And I would just say, continue to do what you're doing. I mean, this is beautiful. Blackdoctor.org has become a resource that I even tell my colleagues in my own InReach when they say that our communities are difficult to reach, I point to these types of events and I say, actually, they're right here. And it's not an excuse anymore that we can't represent these underrepresented populations in research. So just continue to do what you're doing and make sure that if we come to you and we ask you to participate, that you have an open mind, ask and ask questions, never take the lack of information as a suitable answer, because it's not. So
Well, now
yes.
that is the ultimate mic drop moment right there. Dr. Melissa Davis from Morehouse School of Medicine, and she is with the Institute of Genomic Medicine, the inaugural principal investigator there. And we put your Instagram, we put your social media handles in the chat because we want to follow you and the work that you're doing here and in the diaspora. I know you said you had some important and groundbreaking discoveries and collaboration that was happening. You want to tell us a little bit, 30 seconds?
Well, we have a global initiative that's about to launch, so I'll say is just stay tuned. I can't tell you all about it yet, but we'll let you know in a couple of days.
There it is. She said this thing is worldwide, baby. Can't stop her. And you know what else you can't stop? SOS, Soul Filling Our Sisters. Stay tuned. We got another giveaway coming up for you. And as we get to the QR code for that giveaway, there it is, the Touch for Life QR code. We want you to click the QR code and we want you to stay with us because we're going to wrap up here and we're going to give you some final thoughts on Breast Density Day, on knowing your family history, on knowing the answer to cancer in your genes. And I want to thank all of our panelists. Stay with us here on SOS. All righty, and we're wrapping up here on SOS. We want to definitely thank our speakers, thank our sponsors, Hologic, High Impact Partners. And Laura, I know that you've got a big event coming up. You want to tell everybody about it?
Yes, we do. As I mentioned, Black Genes Matter is a movement, and we have a nationwide tour that's underway. We will be in the DC, what we call the DMV, the DC market, coming up next Thursday, February 29th, to round out Black History Month. We have the Color of Wellness, where we have great, fantastic speakers. It's a conversation about health equity. It's in partnership with the Washington Commanders NFL team, in partnership with the Theta Nu Foundation, Ivy Community Charities, of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. But it is for the community. It is literally, we're talking about, we've got the best experts. Remember, we only bring you the best experts in this field, both researchers, scientists, and doctors, as well as people with lived experience. We're talking about the impact of beauty, the impact of food as medicine, fitness. We're sharing our stories. You get to ask the doctors. We have a segment on that. And so it's a fantastic program that's coming your way, Color of Wellness. And we're super excited about it as part of our Black Genes Matter tour. And we can have it come to your city as well if you're interested.
I was just going to say, I understand it's sold out, but you can go to the website and you can request that information in your area, in your chapter, in your city, your town, your state, because you know it's not sold out. Your seat here on SOS every fourth Saturday here on blackdoctor.org. Soul Filling Our Sisters. We are, again, so very grateful to our sponsors, Hologic, High Impact Partners. We're grateful to our guests today. We had Dr. Melissa Davis of the Morehouse Genomic Institute. We had Monisha Jackson Shorter, Vina Morris of Afro Pink, Laura Crandon with Touch for Life. And I am your host, Dr. Monique Gary, here on SOS on blackdoctor.org. And we're going to see you next Saturday. Bring your cup. Make sure it's empty because when you leave, it will be full. Take care.